Welcome back, viewers at home, and thank you so much for tuning back right here on INX Prime Channel 345. Now, joining me is Brendon Petersen, who is a tech expert. We will be sharing, or he rather will be sharing his insight on the current state of e-commerce in South Africa. Now, as consumer behavior shifts towards digital channels and businesses adapt to these changes, we find ourselves at a critical junction in the industry. Now, with his expertise in the tech sector, Brendon will be delving into the evolving landscape of e-commerce and its impact on the economy, consumer behavior, and the overall shopping experience. Good evening, Brendon, and thank you so much for joining us once again.
Good evening. It's always great to be here.
Now, just getting into the feel of the e-commerce in South Africa, what would you say are the key factors that drive the growth of e-commerce in South Africa?
It's such an interesting topic and such an interesting time to speak about it, with the shopping period all coming up. I think there's lots of things that's driving the sort of e-commerce space in the country right now. Obviously, one of the things that a lot of people were predicting was the rise of Amazon. But it's also things like, increasing internet and mobile penetration. I think it's like something like just over 96%, 96.1% of South African households have at least one mobile phone. Most people are actually using their phones these days to be able to connect to the internet. Internet access has actually increased. I think we're sitting at about 78, 79% in 2023. And smartphone adoption is very high. You're sitting at about roughly 91% of the country that, has a smartphone of some sort that they're using every day.
Now, just to elaborate on some of the specific technologies that are contributing to this growth, how are they actually contributing to this economic growth? I mean, e-commerce growth.
It's so interesting because obviously with the sort of increased access to the internet, increased access to shopping apps and services and sort of things, obviously what's happening now is you're seeing a lot of maybe stores or shop owners from areas where they maybe didn't have access to a large consumer base. Now, because of the ease of access to these services, are now able to reach more consumers, more customers, able to sell more, support more family, hire more staff. So it's definitely having a major impact. And if you look at South Africa versus sort of rest of the world when it comes to e-commerce, we see here, as we see in the rest of the world, that sort of smaller business, independent businesses are a big driver of the economic sort of circumstances in the country. But unfortunately, we haven't been able to tap into as many of them as possible before, which you are now starting to see happen. So it's a great benefit for the country.
And we all know that e-commerce is quite a huge benefit to consumers because of the convenience it offers. But what would you say are some of the challenges that businesses in the e-commerce sector currently face?
With all the positives and all these wonderful things happening, infrastructure still is going to continue to be a challenge because as much as we have a lot of internet penetration in the country at the moment, we still aren't able to reach those, in the sort of furthest outreaches of our country. So that's one thing that needs to be dealt with. But also things like, last mile delivery. It's all good and well if you're able to find, the perfect thing that you're looking for online, but it's going to take 3, 4, 5 weeks, for it to get to you because there's no delivery infrastructure. So that's one of the things. Obviously, the cost of data is another one. And then, logistics, supply chain, all of those wonderful things are also, concerning factors. And then, of course, there's things like, cybersecurity. I think there's a stat where the vast number of people that were surveyed, by, I think it was the International Trade Administration from the US government, was saying that one of the biggest challenges when it comes to e-commerce is, sort of failed payments. So they're getting online and either the payment gateway is not working or their cards are not working for some reason. So that's a big thing as well. And obviously, as I say, cybersecurity, making sure that these payment methods and terminals that they're using online are actually safe.
Now, when I'm looking at the idea of e-commerce, as much as we tend to celebrate it, I think also looking at the idea of, traditional brick and mortar retailers also coming into the space of e-commerce. And I think through that, we know that when they close up shop, then, it speaks negatively to the unemployment, or rather the employment or the employability of people in South Africa. Now, with the rapid growth of e-commerce in South Africa, how do you see traditional brick and mortar retailers adapting to this trend that speaks, a more holistic, positive result to the economy?
Yeah, it's a great question because I think a lot of people think that when e-commerce comes along, obviously what's going to happen is it's going to mean the death of physical retail. And that's not been the case, especially this country, we love physical retail. And if you look at a company like Redefine Properties, they obviously are the sort of company or the property company behind a lot of the malls and a lot of the sort of properties that the retailers are using. What they're saying is that over the last couple of years, they're seeing an increase in people going to stores, but not just any store. It's stores that are more like sort of large malls, so places where there's a variety of options. So you're able to go to one store, and sort of find all the different options and specials you need under one roof. And they're also seeing more retention with their retail customers. So it definitely doesn't mean that there's a death of it, but what it does mean is that physical retailers are going to need to adapt. So you use technologies like AI, chatbots, WhatsApp, TikTok, all of these things to be able to communicate, to be able to personalize, and to be able to make sure that you getting customers who want to come to your store because they feel like they are the ones that matter. You're not speaking to the masses. It's personalized service that now needs to be the sort of key focus of all of these retailers.
Now, speaking of artificial intelligence, how do you envision the future of e-commerce in South Africa, especially given the increasing prevalence of, artificial intelligence and other emerging technologies?
You know, it's such an interesting one because I think, we've spoken about AI many times on the show. And I think a lot of people are, unfortunately, and understandably though, scared of AI. I think there's a lot of good that can be done with it, especially in the retail space. I spoke just a few seconds ago about personalized service. So I know Cisco did a little study in the UAE, or sort of an example of Store of the Future. I think it was last year in Dubai, where customers could walk into a store, they could pick up a thing, decide, yes, I want to buy it, no, I don't want to buy it, whatever the reason is, put it down, put it in the basket, whatever. And they could actually track and see, okay, customer X chose this, that, and that, customer so and so didn't choose this, but they chose that. And they're able to collate all of that information and then start offering those customers personalized deals, personalized offers, personalized services. And that's the sort of thing where I think the future is going to be. Because if you look at, not just like what Cisco did, CM.com, for example, has got so many offerings where you can get personalized service online using chatbots, using AI. And obviously, we're looking at, things like 5G rolling out more across the country. And then Samsung Research was saying that 6G is actually the next big thing. And they're looking at that rolling out sort of commercially available 2030 and in smaller use cases by 2028. And that's going to bring sort of more immersive, almost holographic style shopping experiences.
Now, Brendon, just to close off our conversation, what would you like for our viewers at home to take away from the, understanding of the current state of e-commerce in South Africa?
I think there's a lot to say. I mean, as we started off the conversation by saying, I think the Amazon sort of impact is what a lot of people were expecting to be the big driving force. And it was, but not in the way that I think a lot of people expected to be. It's not the now dominant e-commerce platform. Things like Takealot have very smartly adapted. Checkers with their 60/60 offering as well as also now expanded, to be able to bring you not just your groceries, but sort of larger things and appliances from hypers. And I think that's the key takeaway is that these companies are looking at ways to make your experience easier, more personalized, but also not sitting and waiting for someone else to come and tell them how to do it. They're finding smarter ways to bring you better deals and bring you better service at hopefully, sort of still decent and reasonable costs.
Brendon, thank you so much once again, for giving us insight and clear understanding on how things are currently in South Africa, especially tonight with relations to e-commerce. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Viewers at home, that was Brendon Petersen, who is our tech expert when it comes to understanding all things currently taking place in the space of technology. And I think today, or tonight rather, we spoke on e-commerce and just understanding, where are we standing as South African consumers as well as businesses. That's where we close it off for now. Let's head over to a net break. See you when we come back.